Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about one of the more unusual managerial ontologies, and that's the undifferentiated relational ontology. Okay? And here you see a big one, a big one, and a big one, and they're all kind of parts of the same one. Okay? So this is an ontology that assumes that all individuals are equal and they're interchangeable parts of a whole, the same whole. You're probably thinking, like, what in the world is he talking about? If you ever watched Star Trek Next Generation or Star Trek Voyager, there was a species of aliens called the There was a species of aliens called the Borg. And the Borg were these individuals that were like plugged into almost like a neural network. And they all kind of functioned towards this common task. And if one Borg died, another one would just replace them. That's an example. Now, eusocial organisms also function this way. Eusocial organisms, that's E-U-S-O-C-I-A-L, include things like ants, bees, wasps, and certain herd animals. So the idea is that if one worker ant dies, as they're kind of trying to collect food or something, there's another worker ant that will take their place, and all the ants are kind of moving towards this common goal. If you accept this particular ontology, you're saying that like an ant or a bee is actually not the life form, but instead the hive itself is the life form. The Borg are not, individual Borg are not necessarily life forms, but the Borg collective is the life form. Okay? So it's basically denying individual will of workers or bees or individual Borg in favor of some sort of a collective. And that's the metaphysical source, and that's actually what we study. Okay? One of my former students, an older gentleman, a non-traditional student in the 60s, explained that he used to go to rock concerts and the music would be in such a way that everybody kind of be like in tune with the music and they'd all be on the same page. I've never really gotten into music in such a way, so I can't confirm or deny that. Okay? So collectivism is a good example of this particular ontology. Think about something like the French Revolution. One of the big things behind the French Revolution was this idea of common good or collective will. And it was that there was like this will of the people that would enable everyone to rise up and overthrow the monarchy. And it assumed that all of these individuals during the French Revolution were interchangeable. So when they'd go into battle, they would just charge the enemy. They'd just absolutely charge, because if one individual French revolutionary person dies, well, they died for the common good of the revolution, and they'd quickly be replaced by another individual. Okay? The Soviet Union also built on this, right? It assumed that workers all across the world were the same, and they had this obligation to rise up, and this common will would somehow kind of guide them, right? All workers were equal parts of this larger whole. And you're probably thinking, does that have any implications in management? Well, actually it does. Taylorism. In fact, a lot of management methodologies, especially focused on manufacturing, build on this, right? So just think about this. I can set up a manufacturing or an assembly line, or I can set up elaborate standard operating procedures or elaborate bureaucratic mechanisms, forms, whatever, and I can use these to strip the worker of their will and make any worker interchangeable with another worker. Again, think about Taylorism, right? Taylor would study the way I have a hammer in my hand and I'm going to hammer a nail into like a piece of wood on an assembly line. So I'm doing this all day, right? As I'm doing this all day, my arm gets tired and I go home for the day after 8 hours or 12 hours, or however long I've worked, and another worker comes right in behind me and is doing this. So I'm actually interchangeable with the other worker because what matters is my task, my ability to hammer, not who I am, my personality, or anything else, right? And if I die or I get sick or hurt on the job, no big deal. There's another worker to replace me to do that same kind of work. Now, it does take away some of my free will, because maybe I would notice that, well, if we use a different size nail, maybe it wouldn't destroy the wood or something like that. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about this. And that's the bad part of it. Yes, in some ways, there are advantages to stripping away a worker's individual will, because certain things don't need to be colorfully interpreted. There's just a certain way to do things, and we don't need people thinking a lot about it, right? Do we need people to be creative when they count change? Probably not. It's very theory X, right? They just count the change, and then we move on to the next thing. At the same time, though, when we strip workers of their will, yes, we can control them better, less likely to talk back, et cetera, but we also strip away their creativity. So the question is, do you want that creativity in the workplace or not? In fact, let me know that in the comments down below. Creativity, stripping away free will? What do you think is better? As always, hit that thumbs up, that's the like. Definitely hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.